running across the nation of Israel, from Mount Carmel on the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River below Galilee, is the lush, fertile valley of the Jezreel. In the very center of the nation, overlooking this beautiful valley, is the crossroad of the universe, the place called Megiddo. I'm standing on top of an ancient tell. Below me are the ruins of 25 cities dating back 3,500 BC. Each city was built on the ruins of the previous settlement and lies in layers which form the artificial hill or tell. Tell Megiddo is one of the most important archaeological projects in the world. Excavations have been going on since 1903, when the first deep trench was dug, which uncovered remains dating back to 2000 BC. Of special interest was the water system, which dates back 2,800 years. The city's water source was a spring outside the city walls, which was easily accessible to the attacking troops. A shaft of 120 feet was dug inside the city, and a 250-foot tunnel was carved through solid rock, connecting the spring. It's still possible to climb the 180 steps down into the shaft and explore the tunnel. While digging occupies those interested in the past, it's the future of this place that fascinates most people. Stretching out before me is the valley called the Place of Troops. Two major roads intersect here. The Via Maris, which went from Egypt to Syria and Persia, and the east-west road, which connected the inland cities to the Phoenician coast. The one who controlled this pass controlled all travel between all the major nations of the Middle East. For Christians, however, this place has even more significance. In Hebrew, the mountain where I stand is called Har Megiddo, Mount Megiddo. The Apostle John, looking into the future, combined those words into one thundering, cataclysmic word called Armageddon. It's here on this place that the final battle of history may be fought. At least that's what some say. They call it the Battle of Armageddon. Maybe it's because this plain is one of the bloodiest battlefields of all history. Literally hundreds of battles have been fought out here, but none was more impressive than the victory won by the first woman commander in history. Her name was Deborah. She's a person just like us. The year was 1150 BC. Under the leadership of Joshua, the land of Canaan had been occupied by the Israelites. Joshua had parceled out sections for each tribe to be settled. The tribes were descendants of the sons of old Jacob, whose name had been changed to Israel. Thus they were called the children of Israel. The 12 tribes each settled on assigned pieces of property. Judah in the south, Asher in the north, Zebulun and Manasseh and Ephraim in the center. These tribes operated independently. In fact, they often quarreled and fussed among themselves and occasionally even went to battle with each other. However, their biggest enemies were not each other. Rather, they were the hostile nations around them. During the 12th and 11th centuries, they were often attacked by enemies from all sides. The kingdoms of Ammon and Edom and Moab, east of the Jordan, and then the Midianites from Arabia and the Philistines along the coast, not to mention the Canaanite city-states which still remained in power. When one of these enemies attacked one or several of the tribal areas, the tribes would all forget their fussing and would band together against the common enemy. A hasty tribal coalition would be formed, and a singular leader would emerge in power, a person called a judge. These national heroes were usually not born leaders, nor did they remain in power once the crisis was over. Each leader was selected by God, not by popular acclaim, but because of his enormous physical strength, such as Samson, or bold leadership, such as Deborah. All of these things were recognized as a gift from God. Deborah was one of these judges. She was just a normal housewife, gradually recognized as a woman, and yet as she grew older and left, she began realizing that she was really a leader. People began coming to her asking for advice. They wanted her to settle their disputes. She was finally forced to set up a tent under a palm tree, actually hell court. Her gifts, therefore, were coming to the surface. But the new nation was having a hard time getting started. The pagan ways of the Canaanites caused a continual threat to the people of Israel. The Israelites' only strength lay in their common covenant with God. It was the weakening of this basic loyalty which caused the fracture in the nation itself. And now the nation was under attack from the outside. The Canaanites from the northern and central hills had gathered a huge army led by the great army general Sisera. They were determined to drive the Jews out of the land and into the sea. The frightening part of this was that not one Canaanite city was going out to fight, but a joint army made up of 10,000 troops, 900 armored chariots manned by archers with long-range bows. The foot soldiers were equipped with iron spears and shields and more protective iron helmets and coats of mail. Of course, the Jews had no standing army. Each tribe had its own militia. But the tribes had not joined together since the death of Joshua 50 years before. Who could lead them? There was but one choice. The old Jewish woman, Deborah, known as the Mother of Israel. And so, just as the modern Israelis turned to Golda Meir after the death of David Ben-Gurion, so these ancient Jews turned to Deborah as their leader. Hearing Sisera was preparing an attack, she sent out a call for help to the leaders of the tribes, asking for men to assemble. She appointed the Israeli general Barak from the Naphtali tribe as her field commander. He secretly gathered a large army of young Jews and hid on the fortress hill of Mount Tabor, which you can see guarded the northern entrance to this place. The Israelites had no armor, no chariots, no long-range bows and arrows. As in the days of Joshua, they fought on foot with bronze and daggers and slingshots, short-range bows and arrows. They had leather-covered wooden shields, but no armor in Nil. Deborah prayed, knowing she would surely lose the battle unless God intervened. What did she know about military tactics? She was only a woman, but that was her greatest asset. With a small company of soldiers, she set an ambush and exposed herself. Knowing that the Kishon River was flooding, she and her band of soldiers came out on this plain and taunted the enemy. It was more than the Syrian general Sisera could stand. And so, challenged by them, and these Minutemen and this old Jewish woman, he committed his whole army. They came pouring down on the plains with their armored chariots and their soldiers wearing heavy armor, and immediately bogged down in this place, which was a swamp. At Deborah's signal, Barak's army swept down from Mount Tabor, surrounded Sisera's men, drove them to the river's edge, and suddenly it began to rain. Cloudburst fell, immobilized all the soldiers. Many of them drowned in the torrential floodwaters. The rest were slaughtered by the Israelites. Only Sisera himself escaped, humiliated, in defeat by an old Jewish woman. He took refuge in a local tent, and his fate was finally sealed that night when the housewife of the tent came in while he was asleep and drove a tent peg through his head. It was a great victory, not only for the Israelites, but for women in general, who emerged as national heroes. And Deborah was immortalized in an ancient poem called the Song of Deborah. Now, what can we learn from this? We can learn that God uses whom he chooses. God is not a chauvinist nor a feminist. God makes no distinction between men or women. He is simply looking for someone who's obedient, someone who's going to allow his or her gifts to be used for his glory. Deborah didn't set out to be a judge, and certainly not a military leader. She was a good wife. She raised her children. She dedicated her natural abilities to God and his service. You know, it's easy to grow discouraged. Sometimes it seems life is just an endless circle, but that's not necessarily so. As you continue your study in this, if you do today what your hand finds to do, and do it with all your might, tomorrow just might be a very significant day. Ask Deborah.